That's it. Got it. The meeting will be held virtually using Teams. The meeting will be held live via the internet link. It's a formal meeting and will assist the conduct of business if participants speak only when invited by the chair. The chair reserves the right to adjourn the meeting as necessary if there is any disruption or technical issues. No, we don't want to be splashed right across the news, so I doubt that will happen. All participants should mute their microphones and video feed when they're not speaking, as it aids the reception for everyone else. Please remember to unmute your mic and switch on your video feed when it's your turn to speak. Speak slowly and clearly into your microphone. Members of the public can view these proceedings by clicking on the link provided on the agenda. And the council reserves the right to record meetings. Recording and reporting is only permitted during the public session of the meeting. Right then, we'll start. Agenda item 2 is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, we've received apologies from Councillor Buttery.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Ruth's got some personal issues at the moment to deal with. A couple of relatives very ill with COVID. So on the behalf of all of us, we do wish her and her family a speedy recovery. Agenda item 3, to receive any declarations under the Members' Code of Conduct. Are there any? I think we've got Councillor Kieran Casey and Councillor Zada.
Thanks, Leader. Just to declare an interest, and it is noted with the officer, but just in the interest of transparency, just to declare an interest in terms of matters relating to the West Midlands Combined Authority, just given my employment with them. Thanks, Leader.
Okay, Kader.
Yeah, this will be no surprise to you. Any matters related to health and social care due to my employment with Dudley Group, as well documented, but I continue to repeat.
Okay, thank you very much. And I've got Councillor Shaukat Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Leader, Trustee of Black Country Healthcare Foundation Trust.
Okay. Do I have any other hands within declarations of interest? I can't see any. Okay, thank you, colleagues. Agenda item 4 then is to confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of December 2020 as a correct record.
Yes, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much, folks. Agenda item 5 is the Capital Programme Monitoring Report, pages 1 to 36. I'll take it that colleagues have read this. Are there any questions or observations, either from the opposition or from Cabinet members? Can't see any. Okay, then. Are the recommendations in that report agreed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Moving on swiftly to agenda item 6. And this is the Revenue Budget Strategy and Setting the Council Tax 21 to 22, pages 37 to 92. And I'll ask Councillor Steve Clark to introduce this. Steve?
Thank you, Pat. We reported to the Cabinet in December with budget draft proposals for the consultation, and those proposals have now been reviewed by scrutiny committees. This year the budget has been developed against the background of an unprecedented uncertainty caused by COVID-19. The financial position does keep changing. Short-term COVID response funding continues to rise. Looking forward, the government financial settlement is better than expected, adding 4 million to the resources, 4 million to our resource forecast for next year. We are now proposing additional investment over and above the December draft budget. So we're proposing an additional £3.1 million per year into adult social care an additional £1.4 million per year into children's services, and a further £1 million next year into pothole maintenance and highway resurfacing. COVID-19 has been and continues to be a human tragedy. In the short term, we've received significant funding to support our response, and our reserves are better than expected, although still low relative to the average. In the longer term, we are still a low taxing, low spending council, and we still show deficits that need to be addressed to be fully financially sustainable. Taking this into account, we are proposing a council tax increase of 4.99%, but this will still leave us with one of the lowest rates of council tax in the country. I move the report's recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I've got Councillor Pete Lowe. Peter.
Thank you very much, Leader. I note Steve Clark's report, and I think, as is normal on these occasions, we will defer formal comments until we get to the budget setting meeting on the 1st of March. Thank you very much, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lowe. For my 3 pence on what it's worth, I think Councillor Clark's to be applauded for putting this budget together with his officers. It wasn't that long ago that we were looking at quite huge reductions in frontline spending, simply because there was a huge black hole there following our response to what has been, the biggest issue facing, well, all local authorities and government since the Second World War. And, the funding has come through. Obviously, we could always ask for more, but I think the whole team, finance team, and the individual directorates and their officers, their directors and the cabinet members really do deserve praise for the way they've pulled this budget together, because 5-6 months ago it was looking very, very bad indeed. And we're looking at what now I think is, last year's budget was fairly positive, and I think this is extremely positive. We're able to put money back into key things like road repairs, leisure, adult social care and children's, and put some of these budgets right, which hasn't always been the case in years gone by. So I commend all the teams, all the directorates, the directors and the cabinet members and their teams on what they've produced here, and we look forward to the debate in a couple of weeks' time. Are those recommendations agreed? Sorry, Steve, did you want to come back on anything?
No,
you don't really need to.
Thank you.
Okay, but thank you.
Thank you.
That agreed?
Aye.
Yes, Leader.
Okay. Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to agenda item, I'll make sure I get the right one. Number 7 is the deployment of resources, housing revenue account and public sector housing on pages 93 to 119. And I think it's Councillor Laura Taylor. Laura's online, yeah.
Thanks,
Laura.
Thank you. The report follows on from the HRA finance report, which came to December Cabinet, and it provides the latest forecast on the 2020-21 revenue and capital budgets. You can see that there are a number of basic themes, which includes the rent increase, and it also goes on to explain the capital programme slippage. So, as I said, it was the same one that went to Cabinet in December. Thank you.
Just looking for any hands for comments or observations. Okay, Councillor Chris Barnett. Chris?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, it's just, so I'm referencing a couple of sections in the report. So page 103 in paragraph 35, I see that the Director of Housing is now authorised to buy land for development, which, could be a good thing for house building. On page 104 in paragraph 39, I noticed that we're stressing the point that we're going to address housing needs of our residents and estates, particularly around health and well-being. and also deliver community and estate regeneration, particularly improving quality. And I have some concerns, one specific to my own ward and also Brierley Hill, but I've received an email indicating that there's an intention to build 24 homes on green space in the Saltwells estate, the only green space they've got on that side of the estate. Also building bungalows on Maybank Road in the only green space they've got there, and also on Lower Valley Road in Brierley Hill, which is currently designated as a slink. And it seems to me that these things don't quite add up. You know, improving quality and maintaining health and well-being by building on green space, you know, precious green space, small amounts that communities have got, doesn't seem to quite add up. And that's really why I mentioned the Director of Housing is authorised to buy land for development. Personally, I would hope the Director can consider finding, you know, brownfield sites rather than building in green fields that the community want to use. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, do you want to come back on that point? On the specifics of any applications that are in, I think Councillor Barnett are probably better sending that query off to Helen, Martin or Paul Mountfield to get a direct response on any application. I'm not aware of any applications on Greenbelt. I'd be interested to know if there are any in, or this is just the usual hearsay and rumour mongering we get with Greenbelt development. Paul can answer the specifics on what the councillor has raised there. Cheers, Paul.
Lower Valley Road is demolition of, past it really, bungalows. So that's a rebuild. Saltwells, although it may look like green, it's actually kind of nuisance area. It's partly used for parking by people using the high street. It's kind of semi-derelict land, really. There's no maintenance of it as a green amenity. We believe what we put back there will be a better design and help the local area in terms of getting rid of a nuisance site. In terms of the delegations, they're broadly the same year on year. Obviously, it's just a refresh of alongside the budget, allowing me as director to negotiate package deals and the like. And certainly, you know, alongside the major regeneration schemes that are happening, that could be important way of meeting housing need.
Okay, could I just come back there a second, Leader, please? Thanks. The email that I've received, Paul, is really specifically about the green space off Copse Road, Leebank Road and Heath Road, which is a greenfield. It sounds like we're talking about two different places there. So okay. maybe we can discuss it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll get in contact with you, Councillor Barnett, and go for the detail. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, gents. I've got Councillor Sue Ridley next. Sue?
Thank you, Leader. This is, I feel like this is deja vu because I raised this last year. Page 96, garage rents, garage plots and access agreements. I have been banging on about this for a couple of years. Paul, you weren't here. I feel like this is my annual bit. The garage plots. I've had great concerns about the garage sites within my own ward. I would be very interested when we can see the list of garage sites that you've been looking at, because this exercise has been going on for some time now. Like I say, this is deja vu because this is the similar report to what we had last year, and we're still looking at it. I would like to say something about the proposals that you're making for use of these sites. One, it says, for an example, off-road parking. I have a site in my ward in Whitegate Road, in fact, two sites in Whitegate Road that were used for, that were designated. They were garage sites, then they were designated for off-road parking. People can't park on them because they haven't been maintained, they haven't been tarmacked, the greenery hasn't been cleaned back, the brambles hasn't been cleaned back, the walls haven't been preserved. So, you know, we're seeing this as an alternative use. We've already got that and you're not doing it. I have raised about these sites before, so I'll be very keen to know when we as elected members will be able to see the list of these garage sites. It says you are going to consult, which I applaud. I'm very pleased to hear that, but please give me a timetable because I don't want to be raising this again next year, all being well. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, do you want to come back? And I see Councillor Taylor's got a hand up. Is that in relation to what Councillor Ridney's just asked, Laura?
It is, Leader.
Okay, off you go.
Thank you for the feedback, Sue, and I do appreciate it. And I think it might be really good if we could maybe arrange a Teams meeting within the next month or so. And if you come to us with the list of the sites that you're concerned about, and we can go through it thoroughly and have a full discussion on that if that's something that you'd be interested in taking part in.
Yeah, very grateful for that offer. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, very grateful.
We'll get that sorted.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Paul, did you want to come back in there?
Yeah, I can support arranging that. Just to say, Councillor Ridney, in terms of timescales, by the end of February, we'll have finished the list and discussed it at our local management team. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, folks. Next, I've got Councillor Kath Baton. Kath?
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, it's actually on the same issue again, and I will thank officers that they have been in touch with us really early days about a site in my ward. But I just want to seek assurances that not all of these garage sites should be considered for house building or for accommodation building. Many of them are not appropriate for that. And I do want an absolute assurance that alternatives and community assets will be absolutely considered. Certainly the one in our ward for Russell's Hall. Russell's Hall is full to bursting point. It cannot absorb any more building without the infrastructure being put in place for it. So that, you know, I just want that assurance going forward that there is serious consideration being given to community asset developments.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Baton. I've got Councillor Laura Taylor to respond.
Yes, thank you, Kathy, for coming forward about that. It is definitely valuable to go out to consult with the locals, because you're absolutely right. Not all of our garage sites are suitable for development, but development can come in a range of designs. So, for example, one of the plots in Hales Owen was a really awkward plot. So instead of it being a development in terms of like quite a few houses, we utilised that to build a single bungalow on, which was actually really vital for some of the families that were waiting on the list. So we're using some of those plots to be able to do these individual builds, to be able to help really build that kind of really unusual property that we don't have in our stock. So as I said, it can come in a whole range of different designs. But you're absolutely right. It's not all about development. It's about how can we best utilise the space.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Taylor. The recommendations are quite long, quite a lot of them. I don't intend to read them all out. I'll take it that colleagues have read them. Is it your approval, is it your wish that we accept and approve these recommendations?
Yes, Leader.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Moving on to agenda item 8, the Gender Pay Gap Report 2020. And this is a snapshot date, the 31st of March 2020, pages 120 to 138. Councillor Simon Phipps. Simon.
Thank you. Colleagues, this report will comply with our legal duty to report on the gender pay gap in Dudley Council. You'll find details of the indicators that we're required to report on in paragraph 7, and paragraph 8 gives a very brief outline of what the pay gap is in Dudley. For the year to the 31st of March 2020, our pay gap stands at 10% when ranked on the mean earnings between male and female employees, and 16% when ranked on the median earnings. The report goes on to detail some of the reasons for this, particularly in that we are a majority female organisation, and Dudley continues to have in-house provision of traditionally female-dominated fields such as the catering service. It's important to note that the gender pay gap is not the same as equal pay. Gender pay gap is the gap between men and women's earnings across the entire workforce, not those within the same jobs, which is what we mean by equal pay. Annex 1 of the report itself, I'd particularly like to draw your attention to page 127 of the pack, which shows a graphical illustration of our workforce demographics. And page 134 shows our steps for addressing the gender pay gap, including some encouraging news about apprenticeship starters, which reflects us as a top employer of choice for apprenticeships. So I'll be happy to answer any questions as best I can on this report.
Thank you, Simon. I've got Councillor Casey.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, just more of a comment really than a question for you, Simon. Obviously, you know, page 137 sets out quite clearly in terms of the national picture and how we are sort of faring quite favourably in terms of the 10% to 16% and about average on the 17.4% in terms of the median. I think the only worrying thing for me in terms of the data that's set out on 137 and 138 is around our comparison to Black Country local authorities in terms of that mean and median gender pay gap percentage. You know, we're sort of not faring very favourably in terms of other Black Country local authorities. And, you know, there's an acknowledgement in the report that we are above that average. I think there's obviously work that's being looked at on this on one, you know, like you mentioned, 134 and 135. I know some of it's been delayed as a result of COVID. But I think there is, and I'm sure we both agree, and I'd hope we'd all agree on this, that there is a lot more work that we can do on this and that needs to be done on this, particularly around some of the stuff on 138 as well, in terms of the percentage of female staff in the lower pay quartiles and our comparison with other Black Country authorities in terms of the top pay quartiles as well. And I think a lot of work could be done as well in terms of upskilling and in-work progression for people within the council. So I think it's positive in terms of some of the steps that are being set out, but I think there is a lot more we can do, particularly worrying in terms of that comparison with the Black Country local authorities. So that all makes sense. Thanks, Leader.
Thanks, Kieran. Simon, do you want to come back on that?
I'm happy to come back at the end after Judy's comment.
I've got Councillor Judy Foster then. Judy.
Thanks very much, Chair. My comments are really about the recruitment and selection training, page 134. I think it's absolutely right that anybody who's involved in recruitment and selection has the necessary training, whether that's about equality and diversity, whether it's about unconscious bias. I think that's really important. I think it should be a requirement of sitting on a panel when recruiting. I do think, though, this paragraph only refers to staff. I think that to show leadership, I think councillors should attend that training as well. I'd welcome a view from Councillor Phipps on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Phipps.
Okay, thank you. So firstly, just to address some of Kieran's comments. Yeah, we do compare favourably nationally. We are well in line with the averages with local authorities. With regards to comparison to Black Country authorities, there is a principal reason for that in the fact that a lot of our neighbouring authorities have decided to outsource some of those predominantly female areas of work. So, for instance, a lot of our colleagues don't have catering services. Some of our colleagues don't have cleaning services. And as we know, those at the moment are dominated by female workforce. And therefore, their actual gender pay gap will be different to ours and will probably look more favourably because they just don't have those services that they're providing in-house. With regards to our own workforce and looking at women in senior leadership positions, we are actually going to soon have 7 of the 12 senior leadership team covered by female employees. And I think that pretty much demonstrates exactly that anybody of any gender can achieve what they need to in Dudley Council, so long as they're talented to do so. And I look forward to welcoming 2 of our new directors, including the Deputy Chief Executive, Balvinda, who will be joining us soon. In terms of what we need to do to be able to improve it more generally, yeah, there's always more that can be done. We have to look at the figures and also bear in mind just the nature of our organisation. But there's plenty more that can be done to encourage women into areas that are traditionally male dominated, that might have higher wages. And there is also things that can be done to encourage men into traditionally female dominated areas. Say, for instance, the human resources team, which you can see has a 5% negative pay gap towards women. So there's always more that can be done. We have to take that into account based on what our organisation is and the demographics of that organisation, but the report details some of that work that's being done. With regards to diversity training, I would certainly hope that any elected member that gets onto Dudley Council has that diversity, and as we've seen recently, if they don't acknowledge the importance of equality and diversity, if they're shown not to do so, then they will be reprimanded by the council and they will be forced to undergo that training, which is very important. If any member feels that they need to submit themselves for that training, then I'm sure that can be arranged. But with regards to unconscious bias training, my personal opinion is that nobody needs to be told by somebody who comes in to tell them that they are unconsciously racist. That is not necessary for councillors, and I don't think it's necessary anymore for members of staff, just like the civil service has decided that it's not necessary for their employees either. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phipps, and can I endorse those comments from you there at the end? It is a fact that we will have more female senior members of the team, the top team, than we will male members very shortly. Obviously, Karen has started, Catherine's due to start at Children's Services, and of course we've got Val and Louisa to start yet in the next month or so, and it does show that, you know, we interview as a panel and we make a decision, and I just don't buy it that conscious or otherwise that there is no bias there. We try and recruit and we try to do our damnedest to make sure that the best person gets that job, and I think the appointments committee in recent months, in the last 6 months, has done just that, and you can see now the effect on that, on the gender in the team. In fact, the balance has probably gone the other way now, as Simon's already alluded to. Don't see any other speakers on this. The recommendations are on page 120. Does Cabinet agree, those recommendations?
Yes, Leader.
Good, I've said all that then with the microphone off. Thank you, Dave. Agenda item 9, again, is Councillor Simon Phipps, and this is the Dudley Council Pay Policy 2021 to 22 on pages 139 to 177. Sorry, 57. Apologies.
Thank you. This is a report that I'm particularly pleased to be able to bring to Cabinet, as it reports on the pay policy for the next year, but also in particular I'd like to draw your attention to the progress that we've made to restore terms and conditions for our employees. After several years of having to take a very difficult decision to restrict them due to financial pressures, we are now able, thanks to the fact that we've had our finger on the pulse with budgetary matters, to end the mandatory unpaid leave for employees and scrap the withholding of a percentage of employees' pay rises that had been agreed. This is something that, as I say, has come as a result of our close attention to the budget circumstances and the same financial management of my colleagues. And it is also the result of very positive discussions that we've had with trade unions. And these changes will take effect from the 1st of April. The full pay policy can be found on page 142 in the pack. It also outlines the difference between the most senior levels of pay within the council and the rest of our workforce. And on paragraph 9.5, it outlines the difference as a proportion between the average, say the chief executive's pay and the average director's pay, with that of the lowest paid and average workers within the council. And I welcome the fact that the gap between the average full-time wage and our directors has reduced in the last year. Again, happy to answer any questions as best I can.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Phipps. I don't see any questions, and the recommendation is very straightforward. Is that agreed by Cabinet?
Yes, Leader.
Right.
Okay, thank you all very much, colleagues. On to agenda item 10 is the annual review of the Constitution, pages 158 to 157. And the recommendations are, this is basically a report of the lead for law and governance monitoring officer. Mo, do you want to say a few words on this or not?
Yes, Leader, happy to say.
Off you go then, Mohammed.
Just very quickly, before I come on to the substantive two items, can I just say to you, and it's on page paragraph 6 of page 159 as well. For the last year, since we've had the pandemic, we had legislation which allowed for remote meetings. That legislation expires on the 7th of May, the day after the next local elections. And as things are currently, we have had no further information or legislation extending it beyond the 7th of May. So unless there is some swift change, we will have to go back to face-to-face physical meetings, which may raise its own questions. But I'm assuming we will find something in the next few weeks. Again, as you know, as things are currently, the government has said very clearly that the local elections will take place on the 6th of May. And obviously, from a pandemic point of view, guidance has been published and further guidance will be made available for the safe conduct of the elections. Insofar as this report is concerned, paragraph 9, Overview and Scrutiny Management Board have considered a report on the future designation of scrutiny committees, and what they are suggesting is that instead of the current 5 from the next municipal year, we have 4: future council scrutiny, children and young people scrutiny, health and adult social care scrutiny, housing and public realm scrutiny. And I think that's been discussed on a number of occasions and is accepted. And the other is just really a tidy up exercise, which we do again periodically, and that's in relation to questions by members. And as you know, in the 1920 municipal year, we introduced a new questions regime for full council meetings, and this is in relation to the deadline for submitting written questions in advance, and it's been moved from 3 clear working days to 2 clear working days. So I'm assuming members will be fine with that. And clarification that in Council Procedure 11.8, the intention that questions to the chair at committee meetings, so this is at committee meetings, not wider meetings, may only be submitted by members who are appointed to the specific scrutiny committee in question, and that obviously is just common sense. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that intro, Mo, much appreciated. I think on the elections, I think the big thing is for us, I'm confident we can hold a safe, COVID-safe round of local elections in the borough. I think the issue to yet be decided is how we conduct a safe count whilst keeping all the political parties happy. I'm sure that the 2 groups represented here tonight could agree on a set of rules and guidelines, but of course it's not just about the 2 main groups, it's about all political parties and independents who may want to stand, and obviously we'll have to try and accommodate as many as possible as when we have the count. But thank you for that. And yes, you're quite right. There's been no news yet on whether we continue to have meetings like this. I hate the meetings like this. I think it's very impersonal. It just doesn't feel right. And the quicker we can get back to normal, the better. But at the same time, it has to be in a safe environment. We have to make sure that all members and officers feel confident and secure in attending those meetings in committee rooms or the chamber. Back onto the recommendations. There are mainly 2. They're on page 158. Is it Cabinet's wish that we approve those recommendations?
Yes, Leader.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Moving on then to agenda item 11, to report on any issues arising from scrutiny.
We have none, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Manjid. And then agenda item 12, to consider any questions from members to the Leader, where we've got 2 clear days notice that's been given to the monitoring officer, Cabinet Procedure Rule 2.5.
Again, there are none, Leader.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you for you all taking part this evening. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time at the full council meeting.
And they might see the Wolverhampton Wanderers, perhaps.
I think it's still 0-0, unless Steve or Pete jump up and down.
0-0.
Still 0-0. Okay. Best of luck, lads. Anyway.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for a good meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.